Trying times in Middenheim indeed. Rumours of uprisings in the north, this dispute between the Ulricans and the Sigmarites, and of course the taxes. The temple and so-called dwarf tax are causing much uproar indeed. The wizard tax, well, less so. That should not be surprising, of course. It's true that tolerance towards folks like myself in Middenland has always been far greater than in many other parts of the Empire. The guild here predates the colleges. Magic users being given a chance to use their gifts to protect and not destroy for at least a few hundred years before, well, we were all taught the skills needed to safely channel the winds. Of course, magic then was even more dangerous than it is now, and the Great Wizard War, Middenheim, did perhaps show that magic with no restriction was something that humans, well, we just can't seem to handle. Of course, today, the guild is merely an outpost for the colleges, but well, still is nice to be able to walk the streets and not worry about being burned by a mob at the drop of a hat. But tolerated is a very far thing from liked. And while many have called out the issues with taxing the dwarves and the temples, well, let's just say it seems only wizards have voiced any opinion at all about the scroll tax. Still, I'm hopeful it will get resolved soon. Personally, I'm keen to return to my own studies. I've made some great progress tracking the moons of late, and I feel I'm getting very close to a breakthrough. This is Red Moon Role-Playing. The Graf's garden party is in full swing, and our heroes are doing their best to find out as much information as they can. You, Siegfrieda, have been enjoying a most interesting conversation with the good Dr. Parvot, when suddenly you are interrupted by a young, seemingly well-dressed lady with long dark hair. She clears her throat and says, Dr. Parvot, so sorry to disrupt your conversation. My lady. She looks at you and does a little small curtsy. Can I just have the doctors ask him just a quick question?
Oh, please, do not. Please, go ahead.
Forgive me, Frau Kirsten Young. I am one of the ladies of court. I was just wondering, Doctor, I'm really struggling. You haven't seen Lady Rhea recently, have you? Lady Rhea? Ah, you know what, actually I haven't. It's a bit unusual. She does love the festival. Yes. Thank you. And off she goes.
I look to Dr. Barbot. Lady Rhea?
Ah, yes, that would be Leia Rhea Elric. You know, daughter of Lord Elric. One of the, well, important lords. And he taps his nose in a sort of conspiratorial way.
I'm sure. Unfortunately, I don't think I understand the inference, Doctor. You may.
Oh, of course. Oh, forgive me, my dear. Forgive me. You are still new to the city. The Graf has a personal council of 3 law lords. They are his impartial advisors on legal matters. But it is an open secret. Obviously, people know who they are, and they have a badge on them and everything, but you're not really supposed to talk about them too much. You know, they're not supposed to be bothered, really. They very rarely appear at functions.
How could you guarantee the impartiality of a lord?
Well, that's a good question. In Tilia, the answer would be you certainly can't. But, well, here in Middenheim, they do things differently.
Well, ours is not to question, is it?
No. I do know that the point is supposed to be that they are a unanimous council. They are supposed to, if they don't all agree on something, then it doesn't go through. But at the end of the day, they also are simply advisors. The Graf can, of course, ignore them completely if he wishes.
And I know that you and I, we mentioned briefly, and you laughed it off and said this is not the time to discuss, but would it be these 3 who agreed that must have counselled the Graf on the subject of these recent taxes that are upsetting so many?
Oh, well, I suppose one of them maybe. Why not?
But they would have had to have come to a unanimous decision.
They would, yes. Ideally. They can present their case to the Graf, but if they're not all in on it, it would suffer, certainly. And of course, the Graf himself isn't going to agree to these taxes, so I'm pretty sure the city has nothing to worry about.
Right, well, and one of their daughters has disappeared from the event.
Well, apparently I haven't seen her all day.
Huh. But she was supposed to be here, I gather. Do not worry, I'm not being an inquisitor.
Indeed, and he toasts a glass of wine to you. Heinrich, what are you up to? Time is passing. It's maybe now, maybe 4, maybe even 5 o'clock. Quite a few people are being ferried towards the Graf, who you think won't be having audience for much longer. But yes, when you look in the direction of your second person of interest, you do see them talking now to another person, a young lady with long dark hair, very attractive. What do you do?
Well, with just enough information in hand to appear politically savvy, I can wander on into that direction. This time, I don't suppose a stealthy eavesdrop is necessary. This is more just checking the tone of a conversation, wondering perhaps if in polite company a third would be welcome. What is it they seem to be discussing?
As you step over, this woman seems to be asking this man a simple question. Oh, yes, and, I mean, have you heard word from her father? Oh, no, my dears, I sadly haven't, but I will let Lord Elric know. Oh, thank you, I'm just concerned is all. Thank you. And the woman walks off. And as that happens, this man just sort of looks at you. Hello? Can I help you with something?
Hello, sir. No, begging your pardon. I'm just, I was instructed by my lady to mingle, and I am attempting to do so.
Oh, I see. Your lady. I think I saw you when you came in. Is that a Lady Wittgenstein or something?
The very same, sir. Schiff Doppler, judicial champion, and I will attempt an introduction.
Fascinating. Lord Karl-Heinz Wasmir.
Pleasure to meet you, and, glancing down at his badge and up at him, a true pleasure indeed. Can't be, easy, given recent events, to be a man in your position.
No, but I do my best for the city and its people. I hope it's appreciated. But at the end of the day, I am merely a servant of the Graf, of course, sir.
Oh, no, of course, and I certainly not to the same degree. I understand better than most how heavy the burden of serving nobility can be.
Well, I do more than serve nobility. I serve the elected count himself. And of course, I am a noble. You, I'm sure, know that.
Yes, nobility of all kinds, of course, and Heinrich is stumbling through it because he is who he is. I hope it wouldn't be too terrible to intrude on matters of business, but how is all that going?
This man gives you a very shrewd look for a moment, but he does give you a bit of a patronizing smile. Everything in the city is well, sir, and all is good. I cannot... Your lady is not from here, is she?
I'm afraid no, my lord.
Then I will spare you the embarrassment. Don't worry, I understand. Business talk of this nature isn't really a good idea. I cannot confide in you anything. I am supposed to be an impartial official, so me giving you my opinions on things would be considered a breach of my station.
Ah, I see. My apologies then for intruding on the matter. I meant not your judicial opinion or whatever the correct term may be. Just more how you're handling it as a noble, as an ordinary man. Just making sure spirits are up and so on. And I'm looking for like a congenial kind of you know how it is kind of thing.
He gives you a bit of a look and starts stepping away. He says, I would love to chat with you, champion, but if I'm honest with you, I have places to be. I will say this, though, to appease your lady. I think I understand what's going on here. Don't worry. Everything is stable in the city. Even if there are some things that might seem a little unusual, well, maybe I would agree with you. But I, for one, will be making sure that any radical changes do not occur anytime soon. Do you understand?
I believe I do.
You could tell your lady that.
She is extremely grateful, I assure you. I'm happy to pass on her thanks.
Of course. A pleasure, sir, but I must be on my way. Enjoy the party. Yes? Good.
And he gives you a very humble little bow, ironically, and walks off.
As soon as he is out of earshot, Heinrich muttering under his breath, "And this is why we don't cavort with nobles. But this seems to be strange. You said there are 3 law lords, right?
You seem to now be hearing that, yes.
And one of them, if I have intuited correctly, insists that he is opposed to these things and will make sure that no radical change is going on, which means to find out where this is coming from, I need to identify 2 more law lords."
That would be quite logical, Heinrich. How did you come round to that?
I've been spending a lot of time with Siegfrieda.
It's certainly rubbing off. But yes, that's a very logical assumption. You heard that man speaking earlier and saying something along the lines of he agreed, and he's just seemed to subtly imply he agrees with you as well, maybe assuming that you were actually there to gossip with him on behalf of your lady. So if he's against it, well, that's 1 out of 3.
Let us hope that they are all wearing a badge.
Kruger, what are you up to? The time seems to have escaped you. That talk with the professor was quite long, but you do see both your friends, and is there anything you'd like to get up to? Or maybe just go and report in to them?
Yes, I think reporting in and letting them know what I've found, that seems to be the appropriate thing to do. On the way there, I'll, of course, continue to keep my ears open.
And as you find the other 2, and all 3 of you find a moment to excuse yourselves and have a little private chat, you are suddenly all summoned over by, well, it's the doctor. And he says to you, Lady Marguerite, just before he goes, I managed to get you your time with the Graf. I assume that's why you wanted, yes? I put in a word in. Apparently you weren't on the list, but I informed them that you were a very important person.
Oh, well, why, thank you.
What do the 3 of you do? The doctor is gesturing for you to follow him. Apparently he's got you an audience with the Graf. Now, you don't think this will be anything long, but, well, this wasn't necessarily part of your plans. What do the 3 of you do as you finally come back together?
Well, yes, I'm looking at the 2 of them with one of those teeth clenched together, uncomfortable stare. Oh, shit. Are we going to have to say something? But we can't exactly turn this down. We can't make an excuse. So, as soon as they are with me, or as soon as I'm with them, well, there's no time like the present. If we have an invitation, we should fulfill it, should we not?
It is a massive honor, so of course, we must accept it.
It is. Please lead on, Doctor.
The doctor leads all 3 of you towards the pavilion. You are now surrounded by Knights Panther, and some of them seem like a different order. Is this maybe the famous Tutogen Guard? They're said to be the personal knights of the Graf himself, from the family name of ancient times, the Tutogens. They part ways, though, and let you move forwards. You spot Siegfrieda, again, this older woman. She just keeps giving you daggers, but she's surrounded by a bunch of ladies and doesn't seem to be coming anywhere near you. And suddenly all 3 of you are before Graf Boris Todbringer. As I said before, a powerful older man, but maybe he's fallen on bad times. He doesn't look nearly as imposing as you'd heard, and that paunch in his belly implies he maybe hasn't been fighting as much recently. He has a bored, disinterested look in his eyes as he barely even notices you approaching, but then a very old man, balding himself, but dressed in some very fine clothing, announces your presence with a bit of a reedy voice. You stand before the Grand Elector Count, Graf Boris Todbringer. You are, according to the list, which a late signing, Lady Marguerite von Wittgenstein.
Step forward, curtsy, try and avoid eye contact.
This seneschal, you assume, seems to look at both you, Heinrich, and Kruger, and imply that you are supposed to follow and bow before the Graf as well.
Of course, I will be copying my mistress's movements as best as I can.
Absolutely.
The Graf turns to look at you, Lady Siegfrieda. Forgive me, Wittgendorf. I'm not familiar with this place. Where is that?
The Reichland, Your Highness.
There's a bit of murmuring from some people who suddenly seem quite interested. You realise Lady Siegfrieda, you suddenly have a lot of attention on you. Other people didn't, but a lot of people are now looking in your direction, and a lot of whispering. I didn't think we were expecting anyone from the Reichland itself of your stature. Welcome to my city. Ulrich, bless you, and Sigma, I suppose, yes. I hope you're enjoying the festival.
It is truly a pleasure unparalleled in our lands.
Wonderful.
I apologize that we did not send forewarning of our arrival. Truly, we had no idea that we would be invited to such a august ceremony as this. And it is our honor, and especially mine, as a lady of the Reichland, to be in your audience, your highness.
He gives you a very dismissive nod and waves his hand a little. Kruger, you have a good ear. There's a few whispers going around. Typical Reichlander. No respect, nothing but any respect. I bet she's here on some secret deed. I've heard she's very foreign noble. How exciting. You're certainly getting a lot of attention, Kruger. How are you feeling?
Ooh, this is a very, potentially very dangerous situation, especially given, well, how I look like. I wonder if any of these folks will have some kind of knowledge of the person that looks like me. I certainly hope not.
They don't seem to. They seem to be mainly focusing on Siegfrieda. What about you, Heinrich? In a weird way, this is everything you ever wanted. You're standing by a noble's side in front of the Graf himself. Everyone's looking at you, quite intrigued.
I agree with Kruger. There is a good kind of intrigue and a bad kind of intrigue. More than anything else, I'm a bit concerned about the attention that this ruse draws. The more people asking questions about Lady Wittgenstein, the more likely it is we run into a problem down the road, but obviously can't make a show of that now. I am not going to give them reason for further suspicion. So play along until something else is required of me, I suppose is the right move.
Whereas I have had a cunning plan.
Interesting. The Graf looks to you, Siegfrieda, and says, well, if there is nothing else...
There is one thing else. That is to say, there is one other thing, Your Highness.
Yes?
My champion.
Yes?
Herr Doppler here, and my spy master, who goes by many names, but in polite society is Hans. They are trained warriors, and truly spectacular in their feats of prowess, and it is something in the Reichland that at events such as these, champions are sometimes set to each other, not to fight to the death, we are nowhere so savage, but for the entertainment of lords and ladies. And I say, hoping I'm not throwing Heinrich and Kruger under a cart right now, or chariot. I believe, in fact I know, that these two gentlemen, for they are gentlemen when in polite society, but the gentility drops off when they are challenged, would be pleased to entertain you if you had champions of Middenheim, and perhaps we could all enjoy a ceremonial brawl, I say, not again really sure how to finish this grand declaration.
There is silence for a moment. The man next to the Graf, this balding man, looks like he wants to jump across the room and gouge your eyes out with a spoon. You hear someone finally break the silence, and it's that older woman from the crowd, Siegfrieda, who very quietly says, "A good thing we are not in the Reichland." And there's a lot of murmuring. The Graf doesn't seem annoyed, but he does seem confused. That was all fascinating, my lady, but this is not the Reichland. We do not brawl at my garden party.
Oh, I mean in I'm losing the crowd here. I mean if I ever had them, in the sense of a gladiatorial or wrestling match, a feat of prowess, Your Highness, not some drunken shambles. They are both trained and highly skilled, entertaining with it, like just as dancers and acrobats and your minstrels are. But if it is not an entertainment that you seek, then that is understood.
The balding man comes forward and bows very, very low before you, before raising up and saying, I do believe the lady is slightly confused. If this was a Reichland event, I am sure we could just randomly do things with no desire for decorum or etiquette. But here in Middenland, things are done respectfully, and we do not propose changes to parties that I personally have organized down to the letter, madam, to suddenly partake in things. But I'm sure it's all just a confusing joke. And a lot of people start laughing, and Graf himself nods and says, yes, forgive me, very amusing joke, my lady. If you wish to present champions to fight champions, you are welcome to go down to the Middenplatz. Are they still challenging my champion? Someone calls out, no, that finished yesterday, my lord. I suppose you've missed your chance. A good day, Lady Wittgenstein. My apologies. And again, at this point, that balding man goes and starts whispering in the Graf's ear. And he frowns, but he nods. And Kruger, with your good hearing, there's a lot of gossip going on. Oh, how fascinating! What an exciting! It's everything they said about Reichland and Nobles is true. They really are fun. My goodness, fun. Disrespectful. She walks here in front of us and demands brawls. It's a good thing the Graf is making the correct decision. The Reichland is coming around here telling us what to do, and there's a lot of angry and grumbling. You don't think Siegfrieda's request has gone down well at all?
Does not seem to have, no. But this is interesting what they're saying.
It's a good job my hearing isn't any good. Otherwise, I would be getting very angry right now.
No, you're a bit distracted, Siegfrieda. Although, maybe make a perception check at a -10, if you would like.
No, I'm happy not.
Then, yes, you do hear murmuring, but your attention is solely on this Graf. And then you're dismissed, and you think it's time to go.
Well, I think on balance, I think of my offer. I was trying to find a way that I might end up being situated next to the Graf, as lofty an ambition as that may have been, and be able to question him, and maybe by putting one of my champions against one of his, that would have been a possibility. Certainly, that seemed a more diplomatic way of doing so than saying, I see your son is crippled, let me help. So I'm glad I didn't lead with that, but I still feel humiliated and spurned, and I get it. I am ultimately a peasant pretending to be an aristocrat, and I have no idea what these people find entertaining or suitable for parties like these.
In many ways, what you said sounded reasonable. Why? What's the problem with it?
Well, it doesn't stop me from feeling like I have made myself look a complete fool. And so I am... As soon as I'm out of his audience, I am storming off. I'll stay within the party, but I am not in the mood right now to speak to anyone, even a friendly face, and I'll make my way toward the punch bowl.
Indeed. So you part ways for a moment. Siegfrieda seems quite mortified, and again, you don't need to roll Kruger and Hoffman. There's a lot of gossip going around now, and a lot of it is either amusement, but there's also a lot of hostility. The words Reichlander noble keep coming up again and again, and, well, I mean, not that you know, but you had heard. Apparently the nobles of these provinces don't get along very well for some reason.
Certainly doesn't seem like they do, no.
You do then also remember that stuff you heard about some of the separatist movements and those sons of Ulrich all claiming things, and this, oh yeah, there was that whole heresy thing going on as well. There's quite clearly a lot going on here, maybe above all three of your heads. If only you yourselves were nobles or rulers of power.
Again, quietly, once no one is around to hear Heinrich instigating the scene, I'll lean in towards Kruger and say, for all their reputation of being fans of glorious battle, I would have expected more.
Would you both like to roll an intuition check? Give yourself a +10, Heinrich.
That's a 92.
2 success levels from me.
Kruger, honestly, this is all above you. You realise now that even though you've done quite well not being noticed, at the end of the day, none of you are actually who you say you were, and apparently there are rules. It occurs to you, maybe it's not so different from the rules you're used to. Even you're not very good at criminal etiquette. Maybe there are other etiquettes you need to know as well. Heinrich, to you it's all confusing as well, but you do have a hunch. You look back to the Graf for a moment, and he's speaking with someone else. And, well, they're getting the same sort of response. Was the Graf even listening to what was said? He constantly seems to be looking far away, as if not really paying attention to anything that's happening. Almost as if he's tired or disinterested. Maybe he wouldn't have minded a challenge or something, but he wasn't really listening. In fact, if anything, maybe that conversation was very swiftly guided by that seneschal who's standing next to him. The only thing you do notice him look at briefly is a woman. A dark-haired woman. It was the woman you saw earlier, actually. A very fine-dressed noble lady. He does suddenly then stand and announce, "That will be all for the night. Lady Jung, could we have a word, please? And then I thank you all for attending. The party's not over yet, but I'm tired. I'm tired. Lady Jung!" And the guards start following him as he begins making his way to that lady, but otherwise they all seem to be declaring that the Graf is retiring for the evening. What's your feeling about that? That's interesting.
I'll call attention to it with Kruger on the back of that last comment that, I know, maybe the fight's just come out of the man. The Todbringer, supposed to be, well, I mean, look at him. That's not the man that I've heard stories of.
No, there's more than just age going on there. I do get that feeling.
Well, it's twice now we've found a note. Well, I wouldn't mean to presume, but it could be twice now we've found someone who is under the influence of another.
Yes. Now that you mention it, that would make sense. That would help explain why all these policies were being enacted, even though they don't really make a lot of sense.
Kruger, now he's told you, you kind of find yourself thinking, observing the same things. This powerful Elector Count currently just looks like a very tired old man.
The person, the Seneschal, that's where the real power sits, it seems. Right?
Isn't that what they said? The power behind the throne? I'd written that off as one of Barrick's cryptic musings, but maybe for once he was being more literal.
We should perhaps learn more about the Seneschal and who they truly are and what their motives might be.
Oh, another adventure.
Well, it'll be fun.
Well, if nothing else, I'm glad we didn't have to fight. I do owe you an embarrassment after that archery tournament.
Oh. The night is young yet.
And so, as the party still seems to be in some swing, but evening is descending, maybe it's now 6 or even 6:30, the three of you find yourselves together again. What do you discuss?
I take another drink.
Oh, I wouldn't take it too badly, Siegfrieda. It seems and then I'll lower my voice considerably, the Graf is not quite himself, which seems to be a common affliction amongst the most powerful folks in this city.
Yes, it did seem as though that Seneschal was the one truly calling the shots.
Siegfrieda, you can roll a quick intuition check. Give yourself a +10, as you do have Etiquette Gilder here, which actually is slightly helpful.
Okay, that's 30 out of 47.
The irritating man, that Seneschal. Yes, he was rather irritating, but then... Really? He looked to be about 70 or 80, and while Kruger might have a point, You didn't think there was anything different about that man to any middle management person you've ever met. He's a glorified servant, isn't he? And you look in the direction and you do see he is just going around ordering servants. I mean, he could have some influence, but it would be very surprising. He does just seem to you like an overstuffed bureaucrat.
I will say that. Seems like yet another overstuffed bureaucrat to me. But I don't know, the theory could be accurate.
Well, at the very least, Graf does not seem to be what we've been led to believe that he is.
No, I think even despite certain humiliations, there was probably a time when I would have taken it deeply personally, and don't get me wrong, I have. But I can also see when someone is being manipulated. Whether it's the same kind of drug-based addiction or malady that's afflicting the Graf, or whether he's being rendered down in another way, I don't know. After the festival is done, I've been invited to potentially get close to his son as a patient, which means I could potentially get close to the Graf, but that may be too late. So, what other theories have you accumulated through your schmoozing?
I'll relay what I found out in the maze about this envoy from Araby being here, and of course this illusionist necromancer. That I don't quite know what an illusionist necromancer does, but it sounds potentially quite bad.
I do know what necromancers do, and I'm making a face.
Yes, I've never heard of a necromancer doing good. Don't get me wrong, I'm sure there are necromancers who practice what they do for the right reasons, but I strongly imagine it is a career path chosen by those with selfish or malevolent ends.
Yes, you'd also, being a physician, be aware that it's often what you're accused of being by some people with little education.
Yes, well, ignorant people.
I will likewise convey the conversation that I had with the Law Lord, and how he seemed very, very adamant that this was the wrong decision and it was his responsibility to stop it, which means it's either coming from outside the Law Lords or he is in a minority of his party when it comes to how things are going.
Which of the Law Lords was this?
Westmere? Like a Lord Westmere?
Wasmere. Lord Karl Heinz Wasmere.
Well, it was one of the other Law Lords, I understand, who not only has the Graf's ear, but whose daughter was strangely absent, this Elric figure. So, perhaps someone worth investigating.
That does ring a bell with you as well, Heinrich. That's what was being asked of that Wasmere. Where is this Lady Rhea?
And he didn't seem to know, but drugs on one hand, a seneschal on the other, a sick daughter, or perhaps worse. These all sound like items of leverage to me.
They do.
Yes.
Pardon if I'm being my normal conspiratorial self, but if it walks like a griffin and it screams like a griffin, well then it's a griffin. It's a conspiracy. Right? How else? You have a law lord that you need leveraged against, so you capture someone's daughter, you get someone hooked on drugs, right? I mean, like, no offense, Kruger, if you were going to exercise this kind of scheme, doesn't this sound like the kind of things that a former, less savory version of yourself would do?
Oh, certainly. It sounds like a very reasonable approach.
Indeed it does, Kruger. It's quite vast. How vast is this conspiracy really? It occurs to you that maybe you've only just scratched the surface, but you have learned some things, and, well, once again, whatever's going on, you have your lead. You have your lead. You just need to wait a few days, and, well, maybe that can answer more, but there definitely seems to be a lot going on. Maybe too much. How could anyone have investigated all of this, you think to yourself?
Yes, indeed. But we do have the lead to Frau Keener. Oh, and will you believe it? Someone thought that I was Caster Lieberung. Here. A certain QF. You might recognize the initials from the letter. I met the man, Quintus Fassbinder. Some form of professor. It seems like, well, he certainly didn't like my kind, I say, with moving my hands to kind of denote that, well, yes, cultists.
QF, as in, please go kill this man and his friends, QF.
He was a lovely man, though.
Oh, well, that's all right then.
To be fair, Siegfried, you'll remember that letter wasn't the one saying, please kill the three of you. That was simply the letter informing your apparent bounty hunter friend of who Castaliberon was. It said things like, I think I found that he is involved in Nuln. I might have a description of his noble family. So you think he was more just informing that individual?
Well, that is someone to trap in a room and interrogate most thoroughly. Maybe we can let Barak know about that, now that we know for certain who this person is.
Yes, I think, Kruger, you can have put that together, that he didn't seem like he was on that side of things. He actually seemed like he was on the opposite side, the people who'd be hunting people like Castaliberon.
Yes. He seemed more on this witch hunter, one of those types, I say, looking at Heinrich and realizing that, well, that's not something I should speak badly about. No, so just someone hunting cultists, because hunting cultists is what good, honest folk do, right? So
he also mentioned something about being a professor and an expert on history and law and esoteric matters.
Yes. Professor. Expert on lore and esoteric matters, he said as well. And as I said, lovely chap.
Well, perhaps an interrogation under more polite terms is still beneficial all the same. If we know what he knows, then we might get closer to what's going on here. Who knows, maybe our theory has already occurred to him, and in less crowded circumstances, he might have more to say on the matter.
I think that's a sound option.
For now, the night seems to be getting ahead of you, and you realize you have a choice to make. You could maybe linger a little longer at this party, although it does seem a lot of people are starting to depart. Or maybe the time has come to head back, and, well, maybe Barak will be awaiting for you with a report to make or not. What will the three of you do, as the party seems to be coming to an end?
Well, the only thing that was left for me was to talk to this elf minstrel, but I appreciate time has got away with us, and all we really know of him is that he dislikes dwarves. I doubt that he is a prime player in whatever conspiracy this is, but he may be a component part of it. I'll keep it in mind, but otherwise I'm happy to leave if the gentlemen are.
I can't imagine people are going to be eager to speak with us after events, so a polite exit seems reasonable.
And so the three of you make your exit, looking one last time at the fine palace and that fine garden. Who knows? You might never see a place like this again. Or maybe you will. And for now, the three of you head back to your rooms at the inn. Kruger, what a night. Part of you begins to think that maybe some of this is a little beyond you. How many days do you even have left before this carnival ends? And you're also concerned about, well, the scene you've made. Maybe it'd be better to lay low for a while. But as you do get back to the inn, there is a dwarf waiting for you. It does seem as if he has some words. But for now, at least, the night is almost over.
You have listened to an episode of Red Moon Roleplaying, where we play the legendary campaign The Enemy Within for Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 4th Edition, published by Cubicle 7. In this third part of the series, we are tackling Book 3, Power Behind the Throne. Joining us as players in this series are none other than Aaron Hammonds from Queen's Court Games and our dear friend Matthew Dawkins. The music was made by Flowers for Body Snatchers, Wordclock, Metatron Omega, Ager Sonus, Apocryphus, Halgrath, and Northumbria, featuring a number of collaborations with other artists, and was used with permission from their label Cryochamber. Check out their website at cryochamber.bandcamp.com or their YouTube channel for some moody dark ambient for your gaming table. We'd like to give massive thanks to our champions of the Red Moon, Martin Heuschober, Simon Cooper, David, Julia, Camilla, Bob Lange, Cameron, Antxon, Graham Barey, and Doug Thomson for their generous support. And we would, of course, also like to thank all of our other patrons. Without your support, the show would not be possible. If you want to support our work, please check us out on Patreon. You can get access to bonus campaigns for Occult Divinity Lost and Coriolis there, as well as get early and raw access to all of our recordings. You can also hear your name read on the show as a champion of the Red Moon, as well as play Cult with us. Most importantly, that support is what keeps the show going, so do check us out there. Thank you again for listening, and remember that Skaven are definitely not real. Except, well, who's gonna believe you? Never mind.